Hello, my name is Caley Rose, and this is How to Get Into Voiceover. My guest today is Mick Wingert. Mick Wingert is a working voiceover director and actor, best known for his roles as Professor Heimerdinger in the Smash animated series Arcane, Iron Man in Marvel's What If, the villainous Il Dottore in Genshin Impact, the Joker in the new preschool series Batwheels, Slappy in Goosebumps 2 Haunted Halloween, Ho in the Kung Fu Panda media franchise. And other roles include memorable characters in animation and game projects like Attack on Titan, Persona 5, The Vampire Dies in the End, Baki Hanma, 13 Sentinels, Aegis Rim, Mars Red, Monster Hunter World, To the Abandoned Sacred Beasts, Voltron, Legendary Defender, One Piece Stampede, the No Sleep Podcast, and more. I am very grateful for this man because I would not be where I am in voiceover today without him. Thank you so much, Mick Wingert. My goodness, I wouldn't have booked as many jobs as I have over the past 15 years without Mick Wingert.
Yay!
Wouldn't have gotten my agents without Mick Wingert, and I wouldn't have the
Oh.
incredible community of voice actors that I'm very proud to call friends and colleagues without you. So, my
Thank
friend,
you.
thank you for letting me interview. Thank you for being here.
Caley, it's my privilege. It really
Thank
is. I'm
you.
so excited to be here, and thank you for that incredible introduction. I'm gonna have to whittle down that bio because that's too
No.
many names.
No, I like reading it in front of people. I debated, should I cut it out and edit it later and intro them later? But I hope that you get to hear that and relish in it, and get reminded of
you.
how incredible you are. You've had an incredible body of work and you're not stopping anytime soon. Yeah.
From your lips to God's ears, darling.
See? So let's start at the very beginning, because I think a lot of people, as you have probably been asked a million times in your career, how do you begin? How do you get started in voiceover? So how did it work for you? And what do you recommend for people?
To start at the very, very beginning,
Yeah.
This career is meant for people who are creatives.
Yes.
And the more imagination that you have, the better. So how did I get started? If you really want to go down to the fundamental, very beginning steps, it
Yeah.
really is about being an imaginative kid, always playing dress up and make believe and imaginative play,
Yeah.
right? I loved playing with action figures. I loved anything where I was creating my own worlds.
Yeah.
There are hundreds of pictures of me as like a 3 and 4-year-old kid running around with every dish towel in the house at one point, safety pinned around my neck because it was a superhero cape. Like seriously, like it's just who I was.
Yeah.
So my parents were really gracious enough to see that and go, "Oh, we should probably put him in some sort of drama camp." And so that's kind of how I got my start. Was my parents gave me a creative outlet for that. And then everybody's journey is different, really. What I would say is, how I got started was I was a big fan of animation and cartoons, and I do get asked this question all the time. Most of the time, if I'm doing a public appearance at a con or something, and the people who are asking are fans of either the media that I'm in or the media I'm associated with, and that is a big part of it. I think people who are fans of a certain kind of art will get it faster than folks who aren't.
Yeah.
And when I teach, like one of the things I teach is how to handle audition sides. And there's a certain format, and I'm sure you've seen them. We get our audition sides in different formats. Sometimes we get a scene that has dialogue and stage direction. Sometimes we get what I like to call a beat sheet, which is where they pull all the dialogue into like chunks of paragraphs. Like Disney likes to do that a lot. And then sometimes we get those auditions that are like tables or spreadsheets, and you've got your lines in a little table cell and that kind of thing. And I do have a point in bringing this up.
Yeah.
And the people who do best with that table spreadsheet style, though, are the ones who are familiar with the media that utilize that style of audition format. And I've noticed that that's usually video games. We get it in that format, or dubbing in anime.
Yeah.
So for dubbing in anime and video games, the more familiar you are, the bigger fan you are, the more you're gonna be able to fill in the blanks on those tables, because when you get your lines in that format, it's so sparse. That is the bare bones minimum
Yeah.
of audition materials, right? Like, you don't have a lot of context for each line. You don't
Well,
they're not giving you the things that an actor might need to
yep.
flesh that out, so you have to be familiar. S
Absolutely.
so, how did I get my start? I loved cartoons, I loved animation, I loved old comedy, um, I loved theater, I loved performing. That really is what makes the difference, and then that familiarity, translating that into a usable skill. I think what a
Uh,
lot of people don't realize about voice acting is that it's voice acting and not voiceover, you know?
exactly.
That voiceover, we tend to think it's a certain thing, it's its own art, and it's kind of a lesser than, and I gotta tell you, the people that I know that work all the time are the best actors in the business.
Absolutely.
They're able to bring an emotional depth to the
Yeah.
character and create a moment in ways that, even on camera actors struggle to do when they're in front of a microphone.
Absolutely. That is helpful to know the difference too, because you have worked with and you are one of the greatest of the greats right now,
Oh, thank you.
and
Oh
so
my
yeah,
gosh,
and so
that's very kind of you to say. I don't think of myself as one of the greatest of the greats.
what?
I'm a middle-aged man in a flat cap. I don't know what you see, but
Come on, Fred. Truly. You have created, incredible characters. You have conceived incredible worlds, and that's thanks
thank
to
you.
you. So I'm sure people at cons are saying, your character has changed my life in this way and all those things. So that's your legacy.
It
Hey.
Thank you for
Yeah.
that reminder, and
Yeah.
yes, I do get messages like that,
Mhm.
and that actually brings me to a second thought that I had in terms of how do I get started. For me, I was a natural born mimic.
I was just gonna ask that. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, and that actually not only extends to what I can do with my voice,
Mm.
right? Whether, whether I'm doing an Arnold Schwarzenegger and I'm changing the sound of my voice and putting on the Austrian accent, that kind of thing, or I'm doing a Paul Land or something like that, like, it or I'm doing Jack Black, right? I mean, that's my
Hey.
moneymaker right there. Um like, I'm a natural born mimic, but it's more than just what I can do with my instrument. It
Mm.
really is giving myself permission, and I have to teach actors this all the time, especially in episodic television. If you wanna do, like, kids cartoons that happen,
Mhm.
26 episodes a season,
Mm.
there aren't many of those anymore, but
Yeah.
even, like, 8 to 10 episodes a season, and you've got 3 seasons worth of material, you've gotta give yourself permission to do what you've seen before, because I
Yeah.
guarantee the writer is writing what they have seen before.
Are you
So,
talking archetypes or are you talking the world of
I'm
series?
talking
Both.
archetypes, and I'm also talking other people's work.
Yeah.
So, all 3 of the impressions that I just did, I have thrown at performances in the past.
Ha!
Um, and some of the iconic things like, you're part of the generation that grew up with, Fairly Odd Parents, for
Yep.
example.
Yeah.
So any of your audience that's gonna remember Fairly Odd Parents is gonna remember, um, is Darren Norris doing Jorgen, and he's just doing a really bad Arnold Schwarzenegger, and
Ah,
he's the big fairy with the camo pants. Like, he's just doing Arnold. He's doing what
yeah.
we've all seen before. He's making it his own. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that he's, like, a bad actor.
Absolutely.
He's
Yeah.
really good.
Choice.
But
Yeah.
that is exactly, that's a
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah.
And
And a good one. Good work.
so often the characters, the archetypes, the writing tropes that we've seen before, if you've never watched I Love Lucy, you're gonna be at a disadvantage. If you've
Yeah.
never watched Friends, you're gonna
Yeah.
be at a disadvantage. If you don't know
Absolutely.
what's going on in the current pop culture scene right now, you're gonna be at a disadvantage.
A
You've
constant.
gotta give yourself permission to do what you've seen before.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, those archetypes, you clued me into that. And then it's very interesting because I think even in music, there's a spectrum of familiarity and surprise. And so we feel very
Mm,
comfortable with things that are familiar to us. So that Arnold voice was close on the familiarity and just different enough to be still interesting. And so that's why it
exactly.
worked.
Yeah,
Absolutely. That's interesting. I'm kind of
absolutely.
curious, when have you found like you've just sprinkled in a little of the Jack Black into other characters or a little bit of the Arnold and stuff?
Well, I know I did an Arnold impression for,
Uh,
in a past life. I did oh gosh, I can't even believe I'm talking about this. I don't even wanna give it airtime.
it's
Um,
fine.
in a past life, I was a
Yeah.
conservative, and somebody did a conservative, like, mockumentary film, and they had an animated sequence with some of the great, like,
Ah,
a GOP personalities, and Arnold
uh,
was governor of California at the time, and he was part of it. So I did the whole thing, with I'm the governor and this and that, and things of that nature.
yeah.
I'm distant. I'm not even gonna say the name of the film,
It's okay.
because I'm distancing myself from it.
It's
But in terms of Jack Black, I mean, that's, the character of Poe
yeah,
is Jack being a version of himself, kind of a
yeah,
lighthearted version of himself for the sake of the character, and
yeah.
and Slappy for Goosebumps is, dark Jack Black. But I would say, yeah, like, even Jack Black's comic sensibility, his comic timing, because I've
Mhm,
had to study that and understand, not I guess the original point I was making is that
mm.
it's not just sounding like Jack Black. "Hey, guys, I
Nope.
got a great Homer Simpson." "Hey, Marge, I can do the thing." But, it's not just the physical work,
Yeah.
right? It's also embodying the emotionality, and I'm very privileged and very proud to say that the gigs that I have booked as sound-alikes, especially in episodic, media, have been because I can act as well. It's not just a, "Let me hear Jack, and let me give you what he just did," but
Absolutely.
being able to take original material and go, "Okay, this is how I have heard Poe react to similar situations. Here's how I'm gonna make him react to this."
Uh,
Master Shifu, I mean, I just kinda broke the training machine, that kinda thing.
you slip into the characters. I'm gonna shut this fan off 1 second. There it is. Because it just popped on automatically and took me by surprise. You slip into the characters so quickly. So does it begin with the mechanics? Because I remember when you were coaching me for that show I did Between Busts, we
Oh,
did
yeah.
Marilyn Monroe and it was Placed Behind the Eyes, and we did Julia Child and it was all and I'm gonna
Yeah.
butcher it right now because it's been so long. But it's I'm sure, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. It's the practice and the mechanics, and then eventually it just comes into your being more quickly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you ask that because process-wise, I'm a big believer in get your character down first, and then the mechanics will come, because
Ah,
so many actors will get in the weeds,
yeah.
especially if you're talking about dialect work, accent work, doing a very specific voice print. Like, if I'm doing an Ed Wynn impression, I'm probably gonna start up here like this and just, start to do the Ed Wynn thing. And that's a great place to start, but if I was
Yeah.
struggling with that, let's say
Hmm.
I was like, I don't know how to make that falsetto thing happen, and I'm starting to talk up, and I'm just, but he also goes low, and all of a sudden, and I'm trying to read dialogue, like,
Yeah.
you're not gonna hear anything except me struggling with that voice print.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I always say you get the character first. So
Yeah.
if you're doing, Alan Tudyk doing Ed Wynn as King Candy
Mhm.
in Wreck-It Ralph,
Yeah.
then you get the sense of who King Candy is and what he's all about and how he's
Yeah.
gonna read, like, I'm already starting to do it from the character standpoint, because
Yeah.
he's gonna talk like this, and he's kind of manipulating things, and he's
Yeah.
really putting forward a very pleasant front, right?
Totally. Totally. Yeah.
And you get into the character of it, and then you can work on the voice print on top, because
Right.
you don't get caught in your
Huh.
audition, in your performance. You don't get caught struggling with learning the voice print.
That's very.
So so I like to teach that way, character first, then vocal print. Now, as a natural born mimic, sometimes, and there are also trained mimics, but, like,
Yeah.
for those of us who are good at mimicking,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes it is better to jump onto that voice print first and then find
Mm.
the character from there.
Uh,
Um, but for the actor who's not good at that, like, I'm thinking about your Between Busts,
I'm not. Yeah.
work,
I need to
like,
work more.
it was more the placements and the sound alike needed to be second to, okay, well, who is Marilyn Monroe?
Yeah.
She was that airhead archetype. I mean, she was shrewd in real life, but
She
she
was.
played that, like,
Yeah.
really, like, "Oh, teach me how to do something.
Yeah.
I'm an eager student," right? And
Yeah.
Julia Childs was very much "This is how you do things, and I know my way around the kitchen," and she was the expert, right? So
Yeah.
those differences
Mm.
become, part of that voice print, and
Yeah.
then will give you where it needs to live
Uh,
as you're working on the voice match.
you're a
Does that make sense?
master absolutely. You're a
Okay.
master analyzer too. You're looking at the big picture and the motivation and the perspective, and there are so many facets of it. So, just to rearticulate for people, it's exposure, it's study. You're putting in that 10,000 hours of watching cartoons, watching animations, and then
Yeah,
stepping back to say, okay, what role does this play? What archetype does this character play? And then putting yourself into it at the end, right? So, where does
absolutely.
yourself come into the character?
I'm sorry, it was breaking up just a little.
Oh,
What was the question? Where does what come into the
where
character?
does yourself then come in your
Oh.
ability to make your own unique choices?
Well, you're asking the wrong guy for that, because I
Right.
just copy everybody else's work. That's what I'm known for.
No,
Um,
no,
but no, I mean,
it's all you.
even if I am, uh taking on a character that somebody's already created, my
Mm,
own choices, my own background comes into play, through vulnerability as an
yeah.
actor. And
Mm,
and when you bring your own heart to the party and you let people see it. Here's a good example.
okay.
When I played Heimerdinger for Arcane,
Mhm.
um Heimerdinger has to have I mean, they were looking for somebody who could do this kind of fantastic creature voice, and I say creature, not like creature, but I mean
Yeah.
creature. He has this very little he's a very little, like, walking carpet little character with a big poofy head and a big mustache, and so he had this little voice, right? And he was based on a legend from League of Legends, one of
Uh,
the video game characters, and the actor who did him in the game was very much like this,
almost
and
Munchkin.
yes, almost
Yeah,
Munchkin, and
yeah.
the the acting required for call outs of a character in a video game is very different from what they were going for in Arcane.
Ha.
In some ways, much to the chagrin of the actors who played the characters in the game when their characters were brought to the screen, you know, it wasn't that it was above them, but it was a different acting style, and so
Mm,
some of them weren't prepped for that audition and weren't
yeah.
prepped to go to the depths that they wanted that to go to. So, my point being, how do you bring yourself to your character? My example is you start understanding who your character is, and in I know it's kind of forbidden to talk about this franchise anymore just because of how much the author has poisoned it, but I'm gonna
Oh,
take a risk, and I'm
alright.
gonna say, for me, when I was reading the audition sides had Heimerdinger and talking to Jace, and I didn't know
Mm,
anything about the plot. I just knew that Jace was in trouble. Heimerdinger was basically visiting him in the equivalent of jail, basically saying, "Hey, you're gonna get through this. It's gonna be fine." And there was this very Dumbledore, Harry Potter vibe.
ah, ah,
Mentor, and I saw this character, and the way they wrote him was just a little whimsical, but still profound and serious, and that's where I got that Dumbledore feeling, and I was like, Grimgrinder's kind of like Dumbledore, but with science rather than magic, right? He wasn't a
uh-huh,
mystical, magical guy, but he was a believer in the power of science. He was a brilliant scientific mind, and
yeah.
a little bit whimsical and a little bit, a little fluffy, for better for lack of a better word.
Those work.
But also at the core, he has to have this center. So the other into the callback phase, the other part of the sides where he has this incredible speech in front of the Council of Piltover, where he has to recall essentially the genocide of his people. So I was like, how do I bring heart to this? Because I can't just emulate a video game actor's performance for this. I can't
No.
just emulate a voice print. And that's where bringing myself to the party came in.
Yeah.
I thankfully have never experienced anything as tragic as a genocide. I've never experienced any kind of anything as traumatic as like the Holocaust,
Mhm.
anything like that. But I had to access the darker parts of my soul to go, okay, how do I bring vulnerability to Heimerdinger so he feels like flesh and blood? And
Oh,
if I can circle back to the original point, what they were asking for and why they didn't just go with, again, the video game actors, they wanted even this fantastical creature
uh,
of a character to feel like they lived in a real flesh and bone universe where there were real emotional stakes. And that one of the best compliments I ever got was from the producers of Arcane, who said, we thought we would never be able to, we were ready to cut this character because we weren't sure anybody was gonna be able to pull it off, but you pulled it off. And
Good
I was
for
like, "Oh, I live, girl.
you.
I live."
Good
So
for you.
so it was
See, a
really
little
cool.
detail. I mean, people need to see how much work, how much acting, how much study, how much time it takes to prepare for these characters. And I think the
Absolutely.
thing, I mean, even with especially with commercial auditions, is sometimes they give you what, 2 lines of what they want, and that feels like okay. And then sometimes they give you a page of
A
what they want,
page
and it's
for
a little
a
bit of
line
this.
of dialogue.
Yeah, yeah,
For an
yeah.
like, that's the one that makes me crazy
Oh, absolutely.
because you're just confusing the talent.
Yep, yep. And you're just and so at the end of the day, you gotta throw it out and look at the spot itself and say, "Okay, who am I in this?" But
Exactly.
also pay attention to the specs and then know when to care about this and when to throw it out the window. And it's not an exact science, but you have
Mm.
such a great way of finding those characters. And then there's a confidence to it that is, all right, I'm gonna roll with what I think it is and own it. And I'm sure there have been times in your career that they've said, "Oh, we want this, a little salt, a little pepper, a little paprika," and then you brought in the Mick Wingert honey, and they've been like, "Well, that's it," you know? More that's happened, right? Because they
Yeah.
don't know, and then they hear something great, and it changes their mind sometimes.
Yeah, I feel like, booking Il Dottore was that.
I saw that yesterday. I was watching you. It was very good, very good.
Yeah, that was,
Yeah,
I love playing villains. They're the
so cool.
best. They're
Yeah,
the
me too.
absolute best, and they had an idea of what Il Dottore is, and of course, that was one of those, Genshin is a huge global property, and so it's a multi-language cast,
Wow.
meaning, like, there's a version in every language, because it's such a popular property, and I think that I don't know if the original was Japanese or Chinese, but it's in both. It's in both
Uh,
Chinese and in Japanese, and I
wow.
think that the original's Chinese. Either
Wow.
way, they have cast members from around the globe who have already created this character,
Hmm.
and for me, I did not have any audio reference for that,
Okay.
um, and they said they wanted him to feel like he was, you know, they want him to feel like he was just this arrogant, unscrupulous doctor, but also like this like an unscrupulous professor,
Uh,
um, and they needed him to be of a certain age, and they wanted the talent to audition this particular character twice,
huh.
because spoiler alert for those of you who don't know, everyone in the Genshin Impact community knows. The
Yeah.
doctor, his conceit in the game is, as a character, is that he actually has found a way to clone himself at different ages, so he calls them segments. So his in his quest for knowledge, he has decided he wants to create a segment of himself at every age to be able to see and to debate an experience, a worldview, a piece of knowledge from
Uh,
every age, every angle of the human experience. I mean, it's a
ooh,
very sophisticated concept, right?
good for
So
them. Yeah.
10-year-old me gets to talk to 22-year-old me, who's
You're
talking to
playing all of them.
23-year-old me, and I'm all of them.
Woo!
Um, but they just for the audition, they just wanted, like, a young version and a middle-aged version.
Jeez.
And I am middle-aged, in case you couldn't tell. So that was easy. But,
Yeah.
I also had to do, like, the younger version, and
Mm.
I had to think about what is it like to be 22 and think that you know everything when you
Is he
really
coming
don't
with the
know
knowledge?
jack
He's not
squat
coming
about the
with
world.
okay. He's not coming with the knowledge of middle-aged him back in time. He's
Mm-mm.
really 20-year-old him. Got it.
Yep. So,
Fascinating.
otherwise, it wouldn't be comprehensive. It would just be,
Yeah,
you
him.
know, it
Yeah,
it would just be more of the same.
yeah.
So,
Fascinating.
anyway, they sent me this audition, and I remember one line was something, and, when you're working on a foreign language property, um, you're there is the literal translation from one language to another, and then a writer usually polishes that up, but even then, when a writer polishes that, some concepts need to breathe, and it takes more words in English to say it than it might in Chinese, or than it might in
Mhm.
Japanese or Korean, and so, it was kind of a bulky line. It was something like, well, you know then what you should do is at the end of the line, right? Like, why are you're asking me XYZ when you know what you should do, or something like that. And I just remember, I don't know how this is answering your original question, but
It is.
I'm just gonna go with
All
the story. So
yeah.
when I was in the audition, I was like, you know what? If this guy's really arrogant and he's a doctor, he's a professor, he's somebody who's knowledgeable, I'm gonna make him that snotty college professor that you hate, the guy who's just so full of his own knowledge and just over students asking him questions. And so I played it basically like, I gave him this take. I gave him like, "Why are you asking me when you know what you should do?"
Ah.
Like, putting it back on the student, like,
Yeah.
"You're an inconvenience to me.
Yeah.
Why are you bothering me with your questions when you already have the answers?" I was actually
Uh,
channeling, working with you as a student. I was like,
there it
"I
is.
gotta do my Caley Rose moment."
You know me.
I'm just kidding, I'm just kidding.
I
No,
know.
I do
'Cause
have
anyone
students.
who knows me knows I'm in a constant state of confusion looking for more knowledge.
I
Oh,
do have
never
students
thinks
that
he
are like
knows.
that though, that I'm like, "You know this.
Why are
Why
you
are
here
you
then?
asking me? You know this."
Yeah. Huh.
But and the delicious part about acting is you can take all those things that you've never been able to say, and you can say them as characters,
Yeah.
and that's where you get a really compelling choice. That's where you get that sense of, nobody else is gonna do this line this way, because I'm bringing my experience as a coach and teacher to the party, because I thought to do it that way. That's what that line reminded me of. And when you
Uh-huh.
let yourself come to the party that way, from my life experience, what does this line remind me of?
Yeah.
That line might mean something totally different to you.
Yeah.
The key is that we're still using the line in the right way that it was intended,
Yep.
but the subtext that we can bring to it, and the character's reaction that we can bring to it, can be very specific.
Yeah.
At the risk of monologuing, I have another example
I
if you don't
love it.
mind.
No, all the examples, please.
So I was coaching a couple of actresses working on the same set of sides in an
Ah.
audition situation, and it was basically just a boilerplate villain for a preschool show. So, kooky, kind of mad scientist turned supervillain kind of vibe, right?
Mhm.
And when I say boilerplate, I just mean there was nothing special uh, about the dialogue. There was nothing unique. There wasn't a unique character written. It was just like, bring what you want here. Here's what she said, and we're talking like triumphant villain moment. The hand wringing. I'm This is my dastardly plan moment. All these archetypical tropes of superhero show writing for kids, and
Yeah.
nothing particularly evocative about it. It was very boilerplate. It was just like, yep,
Mhm.
yep, that's what you expect. Very
Yeah. Yeah.
neutral. So one talent, I was like, she said, "I don't know why. I know it's not this character, but I feel like she's a Midwest mom." And I went, "You know what? As long as we stay true to the archetype, we can make this work, because I think
Uh-huh.
that could be really, really fun." So
Huh.
here's the example. The line is something like, "At last, superhero group A has arrived."
Huh.
Right? And the typical boilerplate way to play it would be, "At last, superhero group A has arrived." Right?
Yes.
Triumphant villain. And I said, but let's say she spent her whole life up to this point running brownie meetings for her kids under 10, Boy Scout
Uh-huh.
meetings, Girl Scout meetings, brownie meetings. So play this line like you're opening the door and you're so excited to see the girls arrive for the meeting. They're all there in a group.
Yeah.
At last, superhero group A has arrived.
That's
Right?
different, but still the archetype.
But it's still the archetype.
Genius. Yeah.
Well, more to the point, it's still the moment.
Yeah.
It's the gleeful villain excited about the contest that's about to happen between the villain
Yeah.
and hero, but it's just a different skew on it.
Yeah. I can
She's
see her being there.
genuinely excited, like she can't wait to host the brownie meeting. Right? And then I had one other gal like, "Okay, I want you to play the Jewish housewife who just took a salsa class and is excited to show off what she learned in salsa. At last, it's the super duper blue blue blue."
So interesting. And
And
either one of them could book it.
either one of them could book it. And
Yeah.
it's something that the casting director hadn't heard before. The key
No.
to doing that is not to grab attention for the sake of grabbing attention. Like, I wouldn't
Mhm.
want you to play it as a rodeo clown just because it's different. You
Yeah.
still have to be able to be a villain. You can't change the archetype of the character.
Yeah.
And and shame on us if we're changing the writing, 'cause we're not
Yeah.
an acting audition is not a job application for a writer's job.
Totally. Totally.
So if you can keep the text the same and keep the moments the same, but
Uh,
give it a little zhuzh and make it you and
uh,
twist it a little bit, be the, be the put upon professor who's like, "Don't ask me this again.
uh-huh.
You know what you should do, don't make me tell you again. Why are
Uh,
you bothering me with this?"
yeah.
Then that just gives it a little tweak that again is based on my life experience or that actor's life experience or that actor's idea,
Uh,
and yet still fulfills the moment that the writing is calling for. That's the big secret, is
and
when
that's how
you
you
are
build.
getting creative, when you are pushing the boundaries of that archetype box, that you've gotta remember that box is there for a reason. And
Yeah.
so if you can honor the reason that the box is there and still play outside of it, now you're
Uh,
doing something brilliant. Now you're
and
doing
there's
something truly great.
that's also where improv, how much is okay, how much is not okay. You're not auditioning to be a writer, but
Mhm.
where is that boundary? Is it one little not 3 sentence, I'm sorry, 3 word addition? Is it a
Yeah,
whole sentence? Sometimes there's a line and you don't know where it is, so you take a risk and you make sure you're within the box,
absolutely.
right? Yeah.
Absolutely. I always tell people, I try to synthesize it this way: you can't think outside the box until you're willing to admit there's a box. You
Uh-huh.
have to recognize that there's a box first.
Absolutely.
Every character in a show is written into that show with a job to do. The
Yeah.
comic relief is there to be funny.
Yeah.
If your improv choice plays him as a tragic hero and at the expense of his comedy,
Yeah.
then you're breaking the box, and
Mm.
you shouldn't book it because you're trying to change the script. If you're
Yeah.
playing Now, that's not to say that you can't go for a comedic take on tragedy. You
Uh-huh.
absolutely can. But again, the difference is recognizing this is my job to do. I know I have to do this job regardless of what choice I make.
Yeah.
I have to do this. And then if you wanna get specific to the scene, in
Mm.
this scene, my character has to present an obstacle to the hero. So
Yes.
I can't improv something that takes away the obstacle.
Yeah.
I can't say, "Well, you know what? Yeah, let's do this then."
No.
Because now you're breaking the scene. Now the scene isn't
Absolutely.
doing what it needs to do. And we've got an
Absolutely.
11-minute episode here and a writer's room full of people who are being paid to do this, who
Yeah.
probably would take umbrage with you trying to change their writing in the middle of the session.
Absolutely. Good word, umbrage. Very good word.
You're welcome.
I'm a word collector. But that's very interesting and helpful. And I want people to notice, I mean, you can tell, listeners, viewers, how good Mick Wingert is at coaching, directing demos. He's done my demo for animation and commercial. And you're just so good at also imparting the knowledge, not just the
Thank
doing,
you.
but the teaching and the coaching in a way that, we've all had directors that give line reads. Anyone can do that. But getting into the psyche and coaching someone to make it their own is a talent all on its own. So
Thank you.
get in a class, get education, get the marketing materials we've talked about. Mick does all of that. And now you're voice directing too, right?
Yes.
This is a completely natural role for you. But yeah, I want to talk about that transition.
That has been so fun. I started voice directing a little bit on, Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous.
Woo!
I d keep basically did a fill-in directing job for that team, and, I, uh and I got on it because Scott Kramer was the executive producer, and he was the executive producer of Kung Fu Panda: Legends of Awesomeness, and honestly, like, that's how it happens in the business. When they say it's not what you know, but who you know, that's what they mean. It doesn't mean that, the most connected person with no talent will always book the job. Sometimes they do,
Yeah.
but it's not like the golden rule, as it were, right?
Yeah.
It's not the rule, it's the exception. Um, but if you are good at what you do, and if you are bringing a sense of expertise to the table, then the connections that you make along the way and the people that you make friends with, and that's I
Mm.
always try to tell people, like, make real relationships in the business. Don't ever go up to somebody and even intimate, "Hi, I'm so and so. What can you do for me?"
Yeah. No, no,
That's
no.
I mean, especially in Hollywood, that is the last thing people want
Yeah.
because they get hit up all day.
Yeah.
Um, go and make friends.
Yeah.
I wanna say at the end of the day that Scott Kramer, Meredith Lane, Peter Hastings, Mitch Watson, these people behind the glass that I've worked with,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, they're my friends. Anya O'Hare, who's head of casting over at DreamWorks Television. I don't work for DreamWorks much outside of being Poe. A little, but I also don't hit up Anya and go, "Hey, Anya, what do you got for me?"
Any
Or,
jobs?
"Gosh, I sure would like to work with you soon." Like, it's not that. You make yourself available. I did
Mhm.
approach Anya when I wanted to direct, and that's how I got
Yeah.
on Camp Cretaceous.
No
But
way.
it is because I was, came to the party with, okay, I've been coaching at that point for like 12 years. Now it's been
Mhm.
15 or 16. I've been coaching for 12 years. I direct demos. Here's a demo of my demos I've directed because you've got to bring them something.
Yeah.
And that turned into, that opportunity. And then from there, again, I was on I had known and made friends with Craig Gerber,
Uh,
who's the showrunner for, Sophia the First and
haha.
for, Elena of Avalor, and he was working on his 3rd show, which is called Firebuds,
Uh,
and they had already recorded season 1, and, Sam Riegel, who was his go-to director, and
uh,
was my director when I acted for Craig on both of
yeah.
his previous show. Sam got busy because I don't know if you've heard of this little thing called Critical Role. Um, it's gonna take off, I think.
You
Uh,
think?
but the voice actors and directors who were involved with Critical Role, and for your audience who doesn't know, that's
Yeah.
a streaming D&D show that they've turned into an animated series, and they've got properties and I mean, they have a corporation now.
Wow.
And all the actors involved with it. I mean, it was just a group of actors who played D&D
Jeez.
together, and
That's
they started
incredible.
streaming it, and it became this huge thing. So Sam, who was a working voice director and actor in his own right, he was just
Uh,
getting too busy, he was letting certain gigs go, and Craig approached me out of nowhere
huh.
because he had heard that I was interested in directing, and we had a meeting, we talked about it, I started directing for him, I directed all of season 2 for Firebuds, all of,
Woo!
the current season for Firebuds, and that launched me into directing now for Batwheels, which is the show that I'm also on, and it's just so fun. It's
That's so
and
funny.
again, it's about those relationships. It's
Mhm.
about being good at what you do and being willing to put yourself out there with friends and say, "Hey, I do wanna work with you. I do like working with you. If you have a need, I'm happy to fill that." But to
Mhm.
keep in mind that it's not about me, right? It's not about me. I
Ooh,
need to
yeah.
make it in this world, and I need to direct as much as I can. What do you
Yeah.
got for me? But instead going, "You need a new voice director. I'd be happy to show you what I've got, and if we're a match, let's make it happen. I'm happy to
Yeah.
be part of your team."
That's
So,
incredible. It's it's not surprising to me at all, but also it comes with a certain amount of confidence, right? Like you
mhm,
have to believe in yourself and know that you can back it up and then be willing to ask for it. And so that
absolutely.
confidence is one of my favorite things to talk about, but it also I think it comes in those cases from preparation, right? You've done the due diligence, you've done the hard work because I talked to Dina Sherman, who I know through your voiceover community
Yep.
the other day, and a lot that we talked about was perspective, and she's now doing some vocal coaching, and at first she felt imposter syndrome about it, and we
Mm,
all feel that when we first encounter a new situation. Can I do
mhm.
this? I think I can do this. I hope I can do this. It's still scary. And then we get past it and look back. So, did you have a little bit of trepidation about voice directing?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And I love I'm so grateful that I'm still coaching,
uh,
because voice directing and coaching are very different.
yeah.
Uh, they are the same thing, but I think you mentioned it earlier. Anybody
Uh,
can give a line read, but not everybody can educate,
mhm.
and I thank you for that compliment.
Yeah.
But the reason why that stuck with me is oftentimes there are so many things to manage in that room when you're voice directing.
Yeah.
You've got the clock against you. You've got the wants and desires of the production team, the way they want the line to sound. You've got the story, you've got all the directing on top of it, right? You've also got like, okay, does this read give me the story point that we're going for in this moment of dialogue? And so you've got to manage that. And that's as the talent is reading and performing, that's what you're listening for. Am I hearing, we just had two talent, very sharp comedians working opposite one another, doing bits together. We, in a very rare these days to do multiple actors in a session. It used to be done this way all the time, but now it's all solo. Give me 3. All right, let's move on. Give me 3. All right, let's move on. It gets a little grindy, but we were lucky enough to have a comic duo working together in dialogue. And what I was listening for was, okay, are these archetypes playing well off of each other? And am I getting the comedy that's built into this script? So-and-so has to be the grumpy one, and so-and-so has to be the dumb one, because they are the comic foil for each other. So if we're not getting grumpy and dumb in these comic moments, it's not working. So I'm listening for that. And then when you get on the horn and you're like, no, I think I need more. I need more of this. You need to come in hotter to give him something to be funny about with his response to you. Because if you don't come in hot enough, it's not funny that he doesn't get it. So, and massaging that while the producer's going, can we do a rewrite on this line? And all kinds of stuff. So it's so different.
A lot of things. Yeah, that makes complete sense. Okay, I know I need to let you go. I would like to ask you, and I don't think it's a concern. I'm going to preface it with this about AI, and I'll tell you why. And I want to hear your opinion. But I think smaller companies are using AI for voiceover these days, and they're doing it to cut costs, right? But you and I are still seeing the big companies, right? Red Bull, Pepsi, all these, Disney, DreamWorks, they're still using human beings for a lot of reasons. So I know some people are concerned about, it's taking place in some contexts of voice actors' jobs. But for a lot of reasons, to me, I'm not concerned, because I think the humanity is always going to be best portrayed by humans. And that's what we crave and want. So when I hear a robot commercial, I know that's a robot. I don't forget and think, oh, it's my friend at a supermarket telling me that Dial is the best soap. I think source amnesia is a big part of it, which is, a whole psychological thing. So what is your take?
I try to have a more nuanced take on, I try not to be good, bad, right? AI good, AI bad.
That's true.
I'm not a fan of AI for the fact that it has to be programmed using the likenesses of people. There are lots, I can't even keep track of how many people have programmed computers to sound like Dottore, because the Genshin Impact fan base is really, really rabid. Now, that cuts into my livelihood. But like, I'll do a live stream signing of prints for Dottore. It also impacts the way that I can relate to my fans. I can't go on and do my Il Dottore voice in a live stream, even though I might want to, because it's just giving more material for programmers to create my likeness. Will it ever sound just like me? Not at the consumer level. But you got to remember, for every consumer program like ChatGPT, or some other, and this just shows how ignorant I am of what's out there. But this consumer grade is usually 5 years behind the professional grade. And I've seen demonstrations of various professional grade stuff, and it's scary how capable AI is of emulating an acting choice. Do I think that it's all bad? No. I think the question is not whether or not AI is going to exist. It's here. That genie's out of the bottle. It just, there's nothing you can do except learn how to live with it and live with it ethically. And that's the question. The question is, since AI really isn't generating anything, it is culling the talent, work, and skills of other people and mishmashing it and rearranging it into something original or something unique. I won't even say original, into something unique. Because it is that's just very sophisticated plagiarism software, and that's where there's a problem. The problem is the ethics. The problem is the protection of your bio data. My voice print and the voices that I create. Now,
Mhm.
if I'm doing an impression
Yeah.
of Jack Black
Yeah.
for Poe,
Yeah.
that's one thing. I'm being not only am I doing that ethically and with permission because Jack
Yeah.
has already turned down the gig,
Yeah.
but I'm not nobody has stolen Jack's likeness
Mhm.
and or his previous work and
Yeah.
turning it in through a machine, turning it into a new performance.
Yeah.
This is me as an actor doing my performance of Poe and
Yeah.
trying to make it sound as close to Jack for the continuity of the character.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, different
So
purpose. Absolutely.
instead of, well, we have hours and hours of Jack and outtakes and footage from the movies, we'll just program the computer to sound like him and
Mm.
generate new work. Well, you're not going to do that without paying Jack because you're
Absolutely.
literally taking his voice print. Even if I'm close to Jack and pretending to be Jack, my voice print is my voice print, not his.
Yes, yes, yes.
There are differences in the way that we sound. I'm
Absolutely.
grateful that most people can't tell, but we're, in terms
Yeah.
of the raw bio data, right?
Yeah.
His sound belongs to him, my sound belongs to me, and we're both playing the same character. That's very
Yes.
different than telling a computer, take this literal note and this bandwidth of sound waves
Yeah.
that is generated from this instrument
Yeah.
and emulate it, recreate it without any compensation to the artist that created that.
Yeah.
That's so different
It
than
is.
and so it's the ethics. So,
Yeah.
I always try to say, like, at the advent of the horseless carriage, the advent of the automobile,
Yeah.
carriage wheelwrights went out of business.
They
There was a
did.
whole industry of people who were making wagon wheel that
Yeah.
all lost their jobs
Totally.
because technology put them out of a job. So
Totally.
we don't ever want to be the people that are standing in the way of progress. At the same time, automobile wheels weren't manufactured by stealing a wagon wheel that somebody had made and claiming it as their own,
True, true, true.
right? So
Yeah.
same thing with the bio data here. Like,
Yeah.
I get it. We have to live with the technology that's here,
Yeah.
and we need to find a way to do it ethically. And
Yeah.
and so that's where I stand on the
Yeah.
AI thing. It's never going to go away,
No.
but you better put really stringent provisions in there for artist compensation, for protection of likeness, for consent too. So many things are being done without consent or with what we call passive consent.
Yeah.
So there's language in current acting contracts, even union contracts, that say, basically it's provision so that the studios can market a show that you make. So let's say I do Kung Fu Panda Legends of Awesomeness. Well, they want to do a bunch of promos. Well, they own all the audio clips from the show. If that contract didn't have language in it that says they can use clips from that show in any way that they want,
Yeah.
they would have to clear every single promo with the talent. They'd have
Yeah.
to clear every single usage of every syllable of a performance.
Yeah.
And so there's just blanket provisions.
Luckily.
Well, we're now in a new age where blanket provisions create loopholes for things like AI.
Yes.
They can say, well, I have permission to use these recordings in perpetuity for as long as I want it says in the language, in any way or usage that I need to.
Yeah.
Well, you can then make the case, well, the usage I needed to do was to train this computer I have a legal right to do this.
Yeah.
And that's what you call passive permission. And a lot of us are like that. No, there'll be none of that. You can't just, that's where you get during the actor strike, there were the stories of the extras who were like, they asked me to come in. It was contractually legal for them to ask me to come in and be body scanned.
Yeah.
It was part of the day's work for a day's pay.
Yeah.
But they were scanning my likeness so they could put me in other movies.
And that's really messed up. Yeah.
And that's really messed up.
Yeah.
Is it legal? Technically, yes.
Technically.
Is it ethical? Absolutely not.
No.
And that's again, it falls under that passive,
that
passive consent. So active consent is really important.
Yeah. And that's where we can stand together and fight and try to
absolutely
not stand over and get steamrolled and not stick with how the old way was, accept where we are. Move forward.
And there are already people trying to find a way to ethically do this. and work with AI
Yeah.
for small market producers.
Yeah.
We have all these corporate narrative videos. It sure would be nice just to crank them out because AI can generate them.
Yeah.
Well, how do we, there are people that are working on the solve of, can we give the actor the opportunity to record the programming, the programming performance, never have to set foot in a booth again to do these videos and still be compensated for the use of their likeness. There are people that are working on that forefront to try to find the ethical way, and that's really encouraging.
Luckily. All right. I know I need to let you go.
Yeah.
Thank you. If you want to study
pleasure.
with Mick and learn from him, you gotta, because I mean, I've recommended so many people to you over the years. You're my go-to, my only, for demos, for course learning on voiceover. And he has these amazing workout groups where you can work on these auditions. You have to qualify to get in. So you got to do your work, you got to do your education, you got to do your 10,000 hours, but it's something to aspire to because Mick Wingert is the one and only. So thank you. It was so good to talk to you.
I'm so grateful for this opportunity, Caley. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Till next time.
You're the best. I will see you soon somehow.
All right.
Good luck with everything.
So drop they wonder who's that girl.
Hey, this is Caley Rose again, and if you want to learn even more about how to get into voiceover, I have a course out called How to Get Into Voiceover, My Secrets to Six-Figure Voiceover Success. You can learn more about how to get into voiceover, what you need, how to find that ever so elusive voiceover agent, how to book auditions, how to find jobs, and more. You can also learn more about our special guest down in the show description below. Check it out. Hey, I'm Caley Rose, and thank you so much for watching my video. If you like what you saw, subscribe.